I hope everyone out there had a wonderful, productive week and now have the ability to take some time and relax this Saturday, 3 December 2022, currently 14:05 hours, that is 2:05 p.m. in the afternoon. For those of you in the civilian world, currently here on the northeast coast of Florida, it is a beautiful 82.9 degrees Fahrenheit. We had a high today of 83.3 and a low of 57.2. Winds are light out of the south at about 1 mile an hour, and the barometer is at 30.29 inches of mercury and falling. Beautiful sunny day. Always want to make sure I take time to say thank you, not only to God above for having the ability to do this, but for my audience showing up here every day and engaging in the comments section. Also, a big thank you to those of you who have continued to join us over at the Patreon channel, where it's only $1 per month, even less if you sign up for an entire year. We got a doozy of a video brewing for probably later tonight or tomorrow afternoon. It has to do with what we talked about before, about how there are things going on right now with moralists and conservatives and those who want freedom and liberty, and they're starting to find themselves at odds with one another. At Vimeo, we can take the gloves off, so to speak. It's a different server than Google. It's kind of hard to explain, but Google doesn't get a look at it over there, and so we don't have to worry about their censorship. And that's actually going to be part of today's video, a big part of it actually, and how it ties in with psychological operations. And by the way, if you're still holding out on Patreon, $1 per month. You send the dollar. If it's not for you, if it's too racy, and I will admit some of the images are. Real simple. You can DM me, direct message me over there, unlike here, and say, Florida Maki, I get what you're saying. I don't really appreciate the imagery. Can I have my dollar back? Not a problem. You can do that for up to the first 90 days, meaning up to $3. So, once again, lowest allowable level. Would love to have you there. But psychological operations, it goes right along with something that's happening right now in the media, some things that have been reported, and a long-standing theory that I've had about Antarctica and what we are seeing in our skies. Now, I know that seems like a lot of things to tie together, but it really does tie together. Now, I want you to imagine in your mind's eye that you are, let's just assume for one moment, a very advanced race of beings. Let's say that you do exist in Antarctica, and you've been slowly watching the progress of mankind, knowing that you were way, way, way far ahead of them. And you watched the 1200s and the 1300s. You watched the time of Christ. Even before that, you watched the pharaohs. And then you watched 1800 come, and then you watched 1900 come, and then all of a sudden, something happened. See, even if you are a believer in young Earth theory, meaning that you believe the Earth is really no older than maybe tops 15 to 20,000 years, for that 20,000 years, other than the last 300, maybe really 200, this is how most people lived. This was the height of civilization for 1,000 years. People living in castles that had different buildings around it, and then a big wall, and then a moat, and then there were people that lived outside the moat. This was how most of history people existed. There was no plumbing. There was no electricity. There was no modern medicine, very little hygiene. You didn't brush your teeth. The soap was unheard of. This was most of history. Now imagine, all of a sudden, in a period of maybe 100 years, you go from that to this. Towers put up all over. Communications in a blink of an eye around the globe. Fantastical cities. Huge towers into the air, lit up at night. Literally to the point lit up so much that you could no longer even really observe the stars the way the vast majority of our ancestors did. Just in the blink of an eye, just like that. But something else occurred. Something else occurred. Those who rose to power became very, very unpredictable and very dangerous. Now, let's say you did want to make contact. Could you risk it? Could you risk coming from underneath the ice and hoping for some type of a peaceful coexistence. Of course you couldn't. Because what do we know about modern media, modern science, and modern government? They want things their way, all the time. Their truth is the only truth. Case in point. And this is a great quote from Game of Thrones, Tyrion Lannister, the character. When you tear out a man's tongue, you are not proving him a liar. You are only telling the world that you fear what he might say. That perhaps it could be believed, and perhaps it might make more sense than what you're saying. Now, what does this have to do with? What are we talking about? What's going on in the real world that goes along with this? Archaeologists ask Netflix to reclassify Graham Hancock's unfounded Netflix docuseries Ancient Apocalypse as fiction. Now, who remembers back when Discovery Channel did the whole make-believe mermaid thing? Remember the whole thing where they said, we found this mermaid and they created all this Hollywood nonsense? Nobody from the leftist archaeological or science community said one word about the fake Discovery series, about the fake mermaid that they all cooked up. But you see, there's something more brewing with this idea of ancient Atlantis. And it said right here, very, very top, this is from Graham Hancock's Twitter, how many different places have tried to slam this Netflix series. It's number 2 on Netflix, by the way. That's how popular it is. Slate, The Conversation, The Guardian, The Sun, so many of them. Whales Online. Right here at the top, I'm going to read this. I know it's in very tiny print. This is Lauren. If you have any respect for the work me and my colleagues do, me and my colleagues? It sounds like someone needs to go back to English class. My colleagues and I do. You will not watch, quote-unquote, Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix. It appears to be pseudo-archaeology and ego rolled together. The theories are soundly disproven by contemporary science, and the worldview is one of, you ready for this? White supremacy. You see, what they're alleging is that the idea of Atlantean culture, or a culture that existed long before what we know of history, they clearly were all white. And they can't have that. You see, what they're trying to do is they're trying to take the arc of history and they're trying to flatten it. They are trying to take history and make it equitable and appreciable for everyone. Which, irony of all ironies, coming from largely liberal progressives, they are suffering from one of the 24 cognitive biases. Over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel, we talk about logical fallacies and cognitive biases. One of the top ones, conservatism bias, where people favor prior evidence over new evidence or information that has emerged. People were slow to accept that the earth was round. Don't get me started. Because they maintained earlier understanding that the planet was flat. You see, now you can have the conversation. But they don't want there to be conversation. All they want is there to be the one truth. The one great and big truth. With no control, so to speak. And speaking of control, this goes right along with it. And it's something that I've alleged for a long time. You see, there's a school of thought that says all other medications are bad, but marijuana is good. Anything that comes out of any kind of a pharmaceutical house is automatically bad. If you grow it in your backyard, it is automatically good. You can grow hemlock in your backyard. You can grow all sorts of things that will get you all sorts of sick in your backyard. And there are all sorts of things that you can go down to your local Walgreens or CVS and you can get and you can take that are perfectly fine. You can take aspirin. You'll be fine. You can take Tylenol. You'll be perfectly fine. You can take Motrin or whatever else, Pepto-Bismol, NyQuil, people do. But pain relief from marijuana comes from a belief it helps. You see, they did a study where they brought people in, and of course the room smelled like they had some type of cannabis in there, and they may have had a jar of it open. But they gave some of the people actual cannabis, and they gave other people something that was just nothing. And 70% of the people, 70%, 67% of the pain associated had nothing to do with cannabinoids. It was called the placebo response. It's called the placebo effect because, very simply, when you tell somebody, this is what I'm going to give you, you're going to be okay, and they have some type of an indication that that's what's coming, meaning they made the room smell like marijuana just by opening up a big container of it, and then giving them a placebo, they reported, oh, I feel so much better now, thank you, oh, whew, that's the only thing that works, man. Even though they were taking literally nothing. Literally nothing. But once again, you can't really tell people this. This was something we used actually in military interrogation. We would tell people they were getting a reward, and if they did ABC, and believe it or not, if they wanted a drink of alcohol or something like that, we, of course, wouldn't give them the alcohol, but we would give them something that tasted like it or something that looked like it. And man, boy, oh boy, I tell you what, they were so excited to get that thing. I need this thing, or I need that thing, or I need the other thing. Give them something that approximates it or looks like it and make them think, just like the Bible says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he also. It's amazing. It truly is. But it continues. I'd like to ask a lot of moralists out there some questions. See, this is what I was talking about earlier, how moralists and conservatives and liberty-minded people are all coming to this kind of weird place where they're not really on the same sheet of music when they thought they were. Indonesia expected to pass law punishing sex outside marriage with jail sentence. Now, there's a catch here, and it's an interesting catch. Not just anybody can report the crime. See, this goes along with another law that says you can't insult the president or make any kind of negative statements about government, but not just anybody can report the crime. For example, the sex outside marriage, the only people that can report the crime are the families of those involved. Now think about that for a minute. Quote, we're proud to have a criminal code that's in line with Indonesia values. It sounds like they're making Indonesia great again. MIGA. I'll leave you this link and I won't bother you with reading all of it, but I found another one of these images from the 1920s. And I thought it was really neat to show because this was what was throwing Christians into a tailspin at that time. See, a lot of people come to my channel and they see the images of the girls' bikinis, and that's the only reason you live in Florida is because you like to go watch girls at the beach, whatever. You see, 100 years ago, they were doing the same thing. Same group of people, just no internet. See this smarmy guy here checking out that lower kneecap down there? See, this is what was throwing Christians at that time into the ballot box. We're going to vote this out. We are going to use our ability to vote to get rid of this horrific, horrible practice of allowing men and women into public establishments with their calves showing and imbibing alcohol. This is not what the founding fathers intended. This is not what our founding fathers fought and died for. Allowing this horrible, horrible nonsense, this completely inappropriate. And boy, I tell you what, you go to the beach, you better be ready. You better be ready to follow laws. This is from the United States. Can you imagine? Can you imagine now what they would be saying to you, what your great-grandparents would be saying to you about your love of capitalism, love of letting the free market just do whatever. You see, I'm going to make a statement here that's going to blow a lot of people's minds. This image on the right is a matter of republic security for Florida. See, there's a reason we have giant throngs of people that come here every year to vacation, and they bring billions of dollars. There's a reason, and it ain't Disney. There's a reason people come to Florida. I mean, it's probably the only place in the world where you can show up in the evening, have dinner, stay night at your hotel on the east coast of Florida, say Daytona or Fort Lauderdale, and you can watch the sun come up over the ocean and you can enjoy your day. And then you can drive over to the middle and maybe take a stop off at Universal or someplace like that, maybe Epcot. And then still have enough time to drive over to the Gulf side and maybe check into your hotel there in Clearwater or St. Pete, and then watch the sun go down over the water, all in the same day. You see, this is how Florida makes its money. And I tell you what, there's probably a lot of Christians out there like, wait a minute, really? Wait, hold on. We have all of this extra money, all of this extra revenue, all of this ability to do all of these good things. Governor DeSantis doing all of these good things, handing out checks to teachers, checks to firefighters, checks to policemen, checks to first responders, money to protect the waterways. All of these wonderful things. You know why? Because people come to Florida to go to the beach. And it ain't just because of that wonderful salt air. And that's just the way things are this 3 December 2022. It's just the case. So, sometimes the truth is hard to accept, even though that's the reality. You can't just say, this is going to be one static reality. This is what ties it all the way back to here. There are realities that people don't want to admit exist. And from our perspective, we have a ton to gain from perhaps making contact with a very advanced culture. But what is in it for them? As a culture right now, a planetary culture right now, could we truly look in the mirror and say, yeah, we would be good for another culture to come into contact with? Right now in the world, we are literally our worst selves. Absolutely our worst selves, and I wouldn't blame any culture, whether they're hidden under the ice in Antarctica, in the deep oceans, or anywhere else, from staying as far away as possible. This thing with Graham Hancock is proof of it. It's just a Netflix show that is talking about the possibilities of an ancient culture that we don't know anything about, having built some of the most incredible structures that we have really no other explanation for. And there is this massive push by the modern scientific community to shut him up, to get him labeled as fiction, to get him ignored. And they want to try to play the race card. They want to try to play the race card to get it done. It's absolutely insane. I truly don't know how anybody can look in the mirror and say, yeah, we're ready for that next step in evolution. The type of technologies that would come to bear. It's just, it's bizarre. It's truly bizarre that you would somehow try to twist yourself into some type of a pretzel that says, talking about Atlantis or Atlantean culture, or what Plato said is some type of view of white supremacy. It is beyond idiocy. So, anyway, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Would love to have you over at Patreon. We can get a lot farther down this road. Talk about different things. God bless. Like, share, subscribe, and we will see you guys next time.